Hi, welcome to Cat and KOOGE Go to the Movies. I am one of your hosts and producers this evening. I'm coming to you live from Boca Raton, Florida.
And hi, I'm KOOGE, the director, and your other host, coming to you from Orlando, Florida.
We are excited to be bringing to you our review of movie Money Confidential.
The theme of this week's movie review is who you gonna call when you want to know how to finance an independent film.
Boy, do I have an answer for you. That question has finally been answered elegantly by the producers and the directors of this very hot film, movie, Money Confidential. Also, please don't forget to like us at Kweliworks on Facebook and YouTube.
Before we begin, I have to make a disclosure. I have a small,
But
but
not insignificant.
I have a small but not insignificant role in this remarkable film. I was honored to lend my wisdom to this counterintuitive masterclass film on fundraising.
Let's not waste any time. Let's cut to the chase with a peek at the trailer.
What's the secret of getting a project funded? Is there a secret?
Well, you got a script that is a commercial script. Commercial in the sense that it's got the things in it that people want to go see.
Whether you're a writer, whether you're a director, whether you're a producer, the quickest, easiest way to make it is just talk to people and get your own money.
I love it every 90 days when this happens.
Filmmaking is an art, a science, and it's also a business.
You cannot even begin to imagine how difficult it was. It's a film that breaks all the rules. There were many times where I said, what was I? Am I crazy? What was I thinking?
The Blair Witch was a box office phenomenon, and it was made by 5 unknown filmmakers.
Right.
Do you believe, based on your experiences, that today the same situation could occur again?
Absolutely.
The whole point of this movie is to show people how they can raise money. Would you like to put in another 1 or 2 shares?
I'll put in one more share.
I've raised millions of dollars for the movies.
It all starts with the money. If you don't have the money, there is no movie. It's just that simple.
What question should I have asked you that I didn't?
I can't think of a single one.
On today's show, exciting, wasn't that? On today's show, we're honored to have the extraordinary major movers and shakers in the creation of this groundbreaking film, both from Hollywood and South Florida. For live audience, please feel free to text any questions you might have. However, before we introduce our special guest, Kat, would you give us some fun facts about this movie?
Of course, Cooge. Movie Money Confidential is based on the best selling book by Louise Levison, who is famous for writing the brilliant business and marketing plan for the Blair Witch Project, which became one of the most profitable independent films of all time. She is now recognized as one of the leading authorities on film budgeting and financing. She literally wrote the best selling book on filmmakers and financing, now in the ninth edition. I will have the pleasure of interviewing her shortly. We also we also will have with us today one of the hottest directors in America who is currently working on a new film and writing a new book. Rick Poplin, a gifted writer and film teacher, willed himself into becoming a director, not only against the odds, but against Hollywood's system. In the end, his own story is a triumph of the human spirit against all odds. He will be joining us for both an individual interview and participate in our roundtable discussion. However, we will begin with where all movies begin, which is money. The money man, or producer as we call them in the film industry, is Scott DuPont. KOOGE, you have the honors.
Thank you, Kat. One second. Thank you, Kat. An honor indeed. Scott and I do go back 30 years, and he still looks young. God,
you look great too, Coach. Pleasure to be here.
He was the hardest and most successful working actor in Florida then. Rick and I served on the board of the directors of the Florida Motion Picture and Television Association to bring more films to Florida. He has gone on to raise millions for over a dozen films, including the latest film. Scott, welcome to Cat and KOOGE Come to the Movies.
It's great to be here. I'm excited. Always love it live.
Congratulations on your success. But first, bring us up to date. What have you been up to since you left Florida for the West Coast?
Just doing a few independent films here and there. I've got I've got 4 films that are coming out this year. 2 I'm really excited about. Hollywood Laundromat and Kyle's Pocket Dial. But by far, the most exciting thing is how well Movie Money Confidential has been received, not only by audience reviews, but actual movie critics who can, as you know, they can be pretty rough. And that's really a testament of the crew that Rick assembled and our entire team, including Maggie Pamplin, the other producer. And, you know, it all started with Louise.
Why this film? It's unlike anything you've done before. It's unlike anything anyone has done before. What made you think this idea of how to raise cash would work or be as popular as it has become?
Honestly, I can't take any credit for that question because it was not my idea. You can ask Rick that when he comes on. But Rick had talked to Louise and he just approached me about the idea. And I thought there would be a really wide audience for it because so many people, not only here in Hollywood, but back in Florida, all over the world, fundraising for the actual movie, getting the money together always seems to be the biggest challenge. And we had no idea that this best-selling book would just blow up. I mean, the amount of people that are watching this film, that are just loving the film, it's been really humbling.
Scott, you revealed in the film that one of the key secrets to raising money, which is, of course, networking. Indeed, I think Rick and Louise as well will agree you're one of the best networkers we've ever met. Most people think networking is going to the right parties, meeting the right people, and having the balls to ask for money. And certainly, it's all of that. Why do you think people listen to you, believe in you, and is that replicable?
Well, I think it's something that you said in the movie, and I won't add the spoiler. They'll have to see the movie for your brilliant advice. That 1 or 2 sentences you said, it just haunts me from time to time. But it really is all about relationships. So when I go to any event, if I go to a red carpet movie premiere, if I go anywhere, I just say hello. I introduce myself. And one of the keys about networking, which can circle back later, maybe 6 months later, maybe years later, when you ask for the money, is introduce yourself and ask them, the other person you're talking to, about their projects, about what's going on in their life. And I always offer to help other people. So for example, if someone has a new movie that's coming out, I will offer to write a positive review for that movie if I enjoy it. Or if somebody's launching a YouTube channel, I'll say, hey, can I subscribe? Can I comment? How can I help you? And I think that that act of giving yourself and helping others in a genuine way often circles back when you're looking for money, if you have a fantastic project that's of interest to them.
One of the best things in this movie is we got to see you making a successful pitch for the film. Now, that was a previous investor. What about your pitch to a stranger? How is that different?
Well, I want to be really careful about this. There are other people that have different opinions, but in my opinion, to ask a complete stranger that you've never met before, that you don't have a relationship for, it usually doesn't work well. I have a little diagram here. I don't know if you can see it. It's called the investor train.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're first starting here, this is where the train leaves the station, where you have zero money and you're trying to get up here. Let's just say your budget is $500,000. When you first start that train going up the hill, you want to reach out to the closest people in your circle. Maybe it's one of your co-producers. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's an old friend. Now, it doesn't matter how much that person puts in that's close to you, but what matters is either yourself or somebody in your closest circle had enough faith to put in a little seed money. And then as you keep going up the hill, you expand that circle of influence and you reach out to people you might not have talked to for 5 or 10 years, but people who might know who you are. The only time I've ever had complete strangers come on board that have never met me, they don't know me, is when we're 95% funded, where it's a $480,000 on a $500,000 budget. And sometimes strangers will come in at the end. So that's my answer about strangers. I don't really talk to a lot of strangers for money.
Now, is there just one budget, or do you have an austere budget that allows the project to go if you don't raise the optimal amount of money you're looking for?
I always have one budget. So let's just say you're doing a micro budget at $250,000. I don't say, oh, we'll do scenario A. If we get this, we'll try to do it for $75,000, or if we get more money, we'll do it for $600,000. If I set a budget for $250,000, that's my budget. Now, with all the producers and the directors, I'll get everyone around the table and say, okay, we can basically put everything in the can, get all the music taken care of, get everything finished A to Z, including the post-production, let's say for $200,000. So maybe that is where we'll set escrow. So everybody who comes in, their money is secured and protected, meaning no one can start spending that money if we decide to set escrow at 200, and then we can usually pick up the last 50,000 as we're getting ready to market the film or have the premiere or roll it out.
Well, final question for this segment. What was the budget for this film, and how long did it take you to raise it?
It was definitely under $1 million. And the reason it wasn't a micro budget like 100,000 or something like that, which you sometimes can do a documentary if you're only interviewing, 5 or 10 people. We had, I believe, something like 60 interviews. There was a bunch of travel in the budget because I was going back and forth between Hollywood and the East Coast. And of course, we had 2 of the biggest movie stars in the entire world, Burt Reynolds and Selma Hayek, in the film. So it was under $1 million, but I think Rick did an amazing job, along with the editing team, with John, our editor, and really everybody. I'm really humbled by the whole team, and Maggie Pamplin, my other producer, who worked on this.
Well, now let me hand the mic over to Kat, who will be interviewing Louise Levinson, whose book and work served as the basis for the film, Movie Money Confidential. Don't worry, Scott. We'll be back. We'll have you back for the roundtable.
Thank you, KOOGE. And now for the lady of the hour behind the film, Louise Levinson. Thank you for joining us from North Palm Beach. Welcome.
Thank you.
My first question is, who turns a textbook into a movie and makes it a hit? Have you been surprised at the success and reactions of your movie?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part.
I said, have you been surprised by the success and reactions of the movie?
No, only because I've worked with Rick Pamplin for a long time, so I knew the movie would be something really wonderful. I wasn't sure how he was going to do it, but I know him.
I was surprised, as I am sure many of the viewers were as well. Is it illegal to just go ask strangers to invest in a film? First of all, why is that? And is it true that a filmmaker must have a lawyer draft an agreement and commitments, and every page has an agreement, which of course states that you can lose money?
Well, it's not illegal, as a lot of people who found out when they asked family for money and they just gave it to them. And then the movie was really successful. Everybody fought over the reward and who got what and all that sort of thing. You really need to have not only a business plan, which is the part I do, which shows the investor why it's a good investment, but you also have what they call an investor offering that the attorney does, which tells you all the good stuff and tells you that it's a risk and all that sort of things, and has everybody sign agreements.
Got it. I think it would be safe to say that filmmaking in general and in Hollywood has not only been a man's game, it's been a hostile environment for women. Did your success in the Blair Witch Project open the door for you and other women in the financial management and planning of movies? If so, how?
No. I mean, essentially, I opened my door for me by doing the Blair Witch Project and writing the first edition of my book. Here's the 9th edition, which just came out. And it's a hard road. It's always a hard road up, but working in the financial area I found it's difficult in any business. I worked in other businesses for 10 years before I got into film. And it's always kind of a hard road, but after a while, the one thing that's good is I've done it for a while, and now investors trust me, and investors think the answer that my business plans are credible. In terms of people in general, in the business, it's still difficult, if I be honest, but you got to keep working at it, and eventually people will come around.
I agree. The budget is one thing, but the business plan is another. What is included in a film business plan?
The business plan, as I said, is a marketing document. It has to be written carefully. It's not a legal document, but I've worked with a lot of attorneys, so the way I explain how to write it and show it online is pretty close to keeping you from having any legal pitfalls. But it involves explaining a synopsis of the film, explaining your company and who you are, giving a little background on the industry. Other than what the film is about, what the story is, the two most important things are explaining the marketing possibilities for the film, who's going to go see this film. And the other part, really important, is the forecast, finding comparative films and running them out in a reasonable manner so you can forecast how the film is going to do. The only thing that isn't a fact in the book and in the business plan, though, is the forecast because the forecast is a prediction based on things that you show the investor you're using. But everything that's in text in the business plan that you're talking about has to be a fact. For instance, you can talk about people who are going to be in the film, who you've talked to and have some agreement with, or some piece of paper that says they're interested. You can't put things in the business plan that says, we'd like to have so-and-so. Because when that person isn't in the film, the investors get very upset.
Right.
So the business plan is a very factual document about what the film is and how well it's going to do, except for the forecast part of it, which obviously is, we're hoping based on these facts, this is what the film will do.
If you don't mind me asking, how did you come up with the name of the movie, and how important is the name to the tagline, the name and the tagline to a movie for marketing, and who comes up with this?
Basically, I guess when I did the business plan, you want to have you want to take something the movie is about and have one or two sentences that really have words in them that will catch the potential investor's attention. They have a thing that they call an elevator pitch, which people have said, what if you're not in an elevator? You don't have to be in an elevator, but it's like having a 30-second description of what the film is about. So if it's a horror film, or if it's a comedy, or whatever happens in the film, you want to have those kinds of words early on in this one sentence, which says what the film is about.
What are some other movies you've developed business plans for, and how have they done?
Well, there's not, I've done a lot of business plans, but there's nothing like the Blair Witch Project. One of my favorites is Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. But I can't, offhand. There's one that's been streaming, I think, for forever since I did it. That's on TV right now, called The Greater, which I really love. It's a sports film.
Okay. And are more women getting involved in producing and financing films? And of course, does that encourage you?
Does what?
Does that encourage it?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that.
I asked you about women getting involved in producing and financing the films.
Yeah, when I first started out, it was probably 15 years. I've been doing this for about 30. It was probably 15 years before women would come to me without bringing a man along, even though the women were in charge of making the film. So I think it's and you can see as things have gone along, a lot of women, the fact that women have directed and produced themselves some very big studio films has really helped the idea that women are in charge and women can do all this. And the thing that I like to encourage is that women have to believe it themselves. That's what I did. Basically, I felt when I came into the business, I knew what I was doing. I created the business plan format myself in terms of forecasting, and I just kept doing it and telling people this is what I do, and going to places like Sundance, and eventually people then started to believe that this is what I did, and so I think that it really than worrying about the other people is to really know yourself. This is what you can do.
Right.
And to go forward with it. And it's like in writing books or making films, anything like that. It really comes, I think, from you first, knowing this is what you're going to do.
For anybody who would like to get involved in film financing, Do they need to go to film school, business school, or just read your book?
Well, it depends on, I mean, when you talk about financing, I think that they have to, if they're going to make a film is one thing. I really think that you should, if you're going to be a producer, director, that sort of thing, I think it's good to take some kind of classes, that sort of thing. If you're going to work on the financial end, I really recommend that people do get an MBA or come out of the accounting business in some way to know that to know really how numbers work and to be able to match those to the films and what they might do.
Got it. Thank you, Louise. I'm
Okay.
really impressed by your work. I'm one of your fans.
Has
Hold
been-
on. Hold on to your seats, everybody. When we
Thank
come
you.
back to the roundtable at the end of the following segment, and now for the man of the hour, KOOGE, would you introduce the director of Money Movie Confidential?
Thank you, Kat. It is always an honor to introduce an old friend and colleague who has kept the faith and manifested their dream. Rick Pamplin, welcome, friend.
Thank you very much, KOOGE. Thank you, Kat. Congratulations on this great concept for a show. We're very honored to be on it.
Your film is rated over 80% by the established movie critics on Rotten Tomatoes, and so far by the toughest critics of all, the ones that really count, the Rotten Tomato audience, have rated the film 100%. You've earned 5 stars out of 5 stars on Amazon and a 95% audience rating on IMDb. As of today, your film is being carried on 15 streaming platforms. That might have changed since I got this information. How does it feel being one of the hottest directors in America?
Well, I appreciate you mentioning all of that, KOOGE. The film is about empowering the people that are watching this show. The film is about empowering people who have not had a voice. I've been in the motion picture business my whole life. I went out to Hollywood. I lived in my car. I was homeless. I got a bachelor's degree. I got a master's degree. Nobody would hire me. It was very, very difficult. And I began teaching screenwriting, and I eventually sold a project to Disney. And then I sold, to other studios. And then I worked for 2 years at Paramount. I worked 5 years with a company at Warner Brothers. And some of the themes that you've hit on in this show that Kat was asking Louise about, it is a very prejudicial business. It is like high school with money. And there are a great many people who don't want to hear true stories or original stories or artistic stories. And I stand in opposition to that. So after being in Hollywood for a number of years, almost 20 years, I came down and became an independent filmmaker at Universal Studios, Florida, where I met Scott DuPont, where I met KOOGE, and I started making independent films. And I found that even in the independent world, there was a great deal of prejudice. The first picture I did was with Michael Winslow. And we did a very positive stand-up comedy concert that we shot at Universal Studios. And literally distributors would say, well, it's funny. Michael's great. He's done 7 police academies, but we want some of that nasty ghetto stuff in there. We want him to talk about biatches. We want him to trash Black women. And Michael and I were appalled. And KOOGE, the longer I've been in this business, the more angry I've become at the exclusion of original voices, of people who have stories to tell. I don't care if they're Native Americans. I don't care if they're Black. I don't care if they're women. The deck has been stacked in film and television against these groups my entire life. And why I made this movie was I said, all right, I'm in act 3 of my life. I've had some success in Hollywood. I've had some success as an independent. I want to empower people. I want to make original content, tell the truth, and I want somebody watching this show to be so inspired by what they're hearing that they go out and raise the money and tell a story and don't let anybody tell them they can't tell that story. Because if we don't tell these stories, if we don't get these true stories out to the audience, our country and our world is in trouble. You know, when I was a kid, I marched in the streets for civil rights. I marched against the war in Vietnam. It's unthinkable to me that my generation has failed, that we still have these obscene wars. We still have children starving all over the world. It absolutely devastates me. So I'm dedicating the last part of my life, KOOGE, to empowering other people, sharing what I know, and trying to inspire people to forget about Hollywood, forget about all these rules, make a great movie. We broke every rule. We had nobody on the crew except Scott and Maggie, who's the other producer, had ever made a movie. I think the average age of our crew was like 29 years old. And I don't care. They're great. The cinematography is great. The sound is great. The music is great. We found a first-time composer. And we gave young people who had talent an opportunity. They made this picture great. They made this, you know, we had the bones with Louise's book. And Louise, who's very modest, has been a great pioneer and a visionary, helping independents understand how to do a business plan, how to put money together. And Scott has spent his career helping make, you know, low budget independent films. And in the post-pandemic world we're in right now, KOOGE, this is the greatest opportunity ever for new voices to be heard, because there are digital downloads, there's streaming. All of the old business models and the excessive overhead of Hollywood isn't working. You know, the James Bond movie lost money. Okay, I mean, who would ever think in our lifetimes you'd say that a James Bond movie would lose money? And if you notice, the theaters are empty, and the big studios have started pulling back these bloated, misogynistic, stereotypical type. You know, when I would go in and sell a movie to a studio, and I won't name, you know, Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, I won't name any names on this show, but I would sit in those meetings and they would say, well, you know, the antagonist has to be a black guy. Okay. They'd say a woman can't be the lead. The lead has to be a white male. And there was a strict system for how, when you wrote a script or sold a project to a studio in Hollywood, there were these rules. And if you don't believe me, go look at those movies. And they didn't want women in the lead. They didn't want to help new people. And the business, I said earlier, it's like high school with money. People in the business in Hollywood got mad when I was teaching or when I was trying to help people, because they said, we found a treasure map to where the gold is, never wise up a chump. And I said, I don't like formula movies. I don't like cardboard villains. I like art films. I like original content. I want my brain stimulated. I want a better world. I want better stories. And that's what drove me. You know, I worked with John Cassavetes. When I did my master's thesis, I got the great honor of interviewing Francis Coppola, a great artist, and talking with these people. And these people inspired me. And all of the great films that have ever been made were made almost in opposition to Hollywood. You know, they were people who figured out a way to persevere and tell their story. And it has nothing to do with budget. It has nothing to do with all their silly rules. And what I want to do is I want to shatter that ceiling, and I want to inspire people, KOOGE, like you've done. When I met you, you were inspiring young people and you were teaching them the craft. You have to learn the craft. You have to get experience. But then you have to have the courage of your convictions to tell the truth. I went and saw the concert for Bangladesh, the George Harrison concert that raised money for the starving children in Bangladesh. And I was in film school, and I was in this very expensive prep school. And I made a little short film about the starving children. And they said, oh, you get an F. That's not a movie. I said, why isn't it a movie? These people are starving these children. This is wrong. And then I went out to Hollywood and I said, what about all these starving children? Let's do a movie. No, that's not a movie. We don't want to make that. And so when I got this film came out, it was successful. The very first thing my wife and I did, we started doing microloans and donations to the George Harrison Fund at UNICEF. And we're now making a movie about donating money to starving people all over the world and giving microloans to people that don't even have clean water, that don't have sanitation, that widows and children all over the world that have been run out of their cities by drug cartels, that, we built a well in Africa for clean water. We helped a Vietnamese widow with her orphans buy equipment for fishing gear when her husband died. And here's what's interesting, Coach. These are the greatest stories never told. How many countries are we in now?
64.
I'm in 64 countries. I give away $10,000 a year. And I give away $25 a day, either to feed starving people or to change the world in a microloan. And I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. So I'm making a movie about that. The hell with Hollywood and to hell with the naysayers. I think it's a crime against humanity that we as artists and filmmakers don't talk about these things.
Let me. I'm gonna
short answer.
I'm gonna interrupt you because you are a movie just talking to you. I was there for your shooting of the Winslow movie, so I know exactly what you were talking about. Even if I did not know your story, I could feel the pain it took for you to get to the point that you could tell this story. Still, the story is inspirational. How did you keep the faith in yourself to stay in the game and make this exquisite, inspirational film feel good?
Well, I did it out of desperation. I had been sued by a few investors. I had 3 lawsuits from one person, 9 counts. We spent 5 years in court. We spent $50,000. Everything was dismissed. Nobody would hire me. Friends wouldn't call me back. And I got to a point where I had less than 10 friends in the world. 2 of them are on this show, Scott and Louise. And I was borrowing money off credit cards. I thought my life was over. And Louise said, oh, I want to go to lunch. I'm going to write a new book and I want to interview you. And I'm sitting there having a panic attack. And she's talking about her book. And I go, I'm a loser. I'm washed up. My life's over. And I just blurted out, Cooj. I said, I want to make a movie about your book. And I did it to divert her from wanting to ask me what was going on in my career. And I said, and she looked at me and she said, okay, can I get another Diet Coke? And I said, I'll buy lunch. So on my borrowed money from my credit card, I bought Louise lunch. And I made a list of my friends, and it was a very short list. And Scott DuPont was the first guy that I called. And I called Scott, and I said, Scott, nobody will hire me. I have no money, no income. I'm living off credit cards, but I've got a great idea for a movie. And 20 minutes after hearing it, letting me pitch it, Scott said, I'll raise the money. And he did. And it was unbelievable. There's a thing called the quick yes and the slow no. When you have a great idea, Cooj, it's a quick yes. And the ones that say, well, let me think about it, it's always a slow no. But Scott was the most stand-up guy. We called an investor. And the guy said, great. So we went out, we had a little lunch celebrating. And then the guy called Scott back and he changed his mind. He wanted to invest in marijuana and he didn't want to invest in movies. And we lost the money. For 2 years, Scott never gave up. For 2 years, I sold my jewelry, my art. I sold everything I owned to stay alive. I sold my furniture. So Scott kept saying, I'll get the money, I'll get the money, I'll get the money. So we had Louise, we had Scott raising the money. So I did it out of desperation. So then when we got the money, I said, we're going to tell the absolute truth. We shot 100 hours of footage. And KOOGE, every time people in the film started to spin or hype or say something that wasn't true, I cut it out. I cut right to the bone. The first cut of the movie was 3 hours long. And we kept cutting. The picture runs now an hour and 41. And some of the investors were so mad because Scott told the investors they could be in the movie, but most of them didn't have anything interesting to say. So as you know, we have film students, we have interesting people. And a lot of the investors were mad at me and they were going to sue me and they were upset and all this stuff. Now, of course, the film's come out, everybody's happy, but you've got to have the courage of your convictions. And I just want to say one last thing, KOOGE, about this as a director. We shot our film over 5 weeks. The typical movie, low budget, is generally made in about 30 days. If every day you let somebody convince you as the director to make a change, at the end of the month, you've got a movie with 30 things that you change to please other people. It's not your movie. So while we were shooting the movie, I bonded very, very emotionally with Burt Reynolds. And Burt said, make the picture you want to make and don't let anybody tell you different. And Burt wanted to see the film. He kept calling, his manager kept calling Scott, and he was out in Hollywood. He was doing this Quentin Tarantino movie with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. And Burt wanted to see a rough cut screening. And I never like to show anybody a rough cut. But Burt gave us 2 dates. So we held a theater in Palm Beach for 2 dates for Burt to come see the movie. And Burt died 6 days before the screening. And
So
when I was cutting the film, I had Burt in my head saying, don't let anybody tell you how to make your movie. So I decided that if this was the last movie I ever made, this would be exactly the movie I wanted to make. And there were a lot of arguments. There were a few people that were fired, and there were a lot of people that didn't get in the movie. We did 60 interviews with people, 100 hours of footage. But I'm very proud of the film. I'm proud of Louise for being my friend and the integrity that she's had as a pioneer, like she and Kat were talking about, because she not only was a woman that succeeded, she succeeded in an area where nobody succeeded, helping, empowering people to do business plans and get the money to make their movie. And Scott's been a stand-up guy, and we fought like brothers and cats and dogs the whole movie, but I love him like a brother, and he was a stand-up guy. And one of my biggest pieces of advice, KOOGE, make a list of who your real friends are. And if you have 10 friends, you can make a movie.
Tell me this, because a lot of people are running around, you might have noticed, calling themselves filmmakers today because the equipment costs are so low. What does it take beyond skill, knowledge, and a degree from a film school to make a successful director?
Well, I think the first thing you have to understand is literacy. You have to read books. You have to understand literature. You have to understand writing, screenwriting. You know, I've read 5,000 screenplays. I have a master's in creative writing. You know, that's all. It all begins with the script. You know, you got to have a business plan and you got to raise money. But if you don't have a script, if you don't have a great concept, you've got nothing. And then I think the one mistake, and I speak at film schools every once in a while, and it's very frustrating because the film schools teach writing, directing, you know, and, you know, maybe editing, but they don't teach script supervising. They don't teach lighting. They don't teach all of the technical things, post-production. They don't teach you how to raise money. They really don't give you enough to go out in the world and make a movie. But my advice in a very short format like this, you have to learn, you better know sound, you better know lighting, you better know sets, you better know everything. And you better be a student of film for life, because everything I learned in the 70s is obsolete. Everything I learned in Hollywood is obsolete. And everything I learned at Universal Studios Florida when I made movies there is obsolete. We shoot on 4K. We have drones. We have gliders. we have equipment that didn't exist a few years ago. You have to be a student of cinema, study the classics. It all starts with story, and stay on top of the equipment. Otherwise, you, as you know, KOOGE, you'll sink. The director has to know everything.
Now, to be honest with you, I expected this film to be good. I expected it to be informative. I expected it to be educational. But I didn't expect it to be beautiful. You spent time crafting a beautiful film. You used dollies, drones, helicopters, or drones that look like helicopters. And you showcased the magnificent venue of Florida. What inspired you to do that? Since it's obviously added production costs,
Well,
but also production value.
Our production designer was also our other producer, Maggie, who was an artist who had a studio, who did work for the Folk Art Museum in New York and the House of Blues. So I had an accomplished artist helping me to create sort of the tableau or the, the texture of the film. These young guys, John Zietz and Eddie from Think Visual, these two kids are unbelievably talented, and I loved them, and they had contacted me on Twitter, and we had gotten together, and I looked at some of their stuff. They looked at some of my films, and they had great passion. Our composer is the backup singer for Mark Anthony and barely speaks English. And he's this wonderful guy, Franklin Torres. And I would go in and we'd start working on the music. And I don't really speak Spanish, and he doesn't really speak too much English. So, but yet we somehow communicated. But the passion that drove it, I think everybody just had great passion. We also, and I have to say this, KOOGE, I had a great experience in Orlando with Kathy Ramsberger at the film office. And I have a great relationship with Chuck Ellard and Michelle Hillary here in Palm Beach, and AJ, all the people that work there. The Palm Beach film office was extremely helpful. And anybody that wants to shoot a movie, forget all this nonsense about incentives. Incentives is a way to control you and tell you you can't have this, you can't have that. You can go do all their rules, and then they don't give you the money. If you shoot in Florida, you'll get more support from government agencies like film offices, and we get free permitting in Palm Beach County, and they will support you with locations. They will smooth over problems you have, and they will really make it a professional movie. So I just give everybody credit. The film office, Scott, Louise, the crew, Think Visual, even my assistant, Alistair Hunt. He had worked for Spielberg and Lucas, and he was trying to get a job in the film business. And he's this amazing kid, and he did a great job. Every job on a movie is important. The movie's only as good as its weakest link. And I've done big movies. I've done movies with a lot of unions. And I think you interviewed me on the Hoover set when I was in Orlando with Ernest Borgnine.
You remember.
Right. And we had 70 crew guys. And I just wasn't comfortable with that. I consider myself an artist and a filmmaker. And, 70 people. So every time I went somewhere, 70 people had to have bathroom facilities and lunches and transportation. I did some work on From Earth to Moon. Remember the HBO series?
Yes.
And we did a move from Universal Studios over to the Cape. And there were 217 people on crew for the move. So we had to have porta potties for 217 people. So at some point, you're not making a movie. You're like, running like a war. You're like a general running a platoon of people. And you lose that intimacy. And I had worked on a John Cassavetes film called Opening Night, which he made for about $100,000, 16 millimeter, with Ben Gazzara and Peter Falk and Jenna Rollins, his wonderfully talented wife. And I was very inspired by John Cassavetes. And I've been on lots and lots of movie sets. Personally, I'm very comfortable. Scott would know what our crew was, but I think it was under 30, probably 25 people. And I feel like I knew their names. I had a relationship with them, and they each brought something to the film. A lot of them had good ideas, and a lot of them had ideas I didn't like. But everybody pulled together, and It is a collaborative medium. I'm an auteur in the sense that I wrote and directed it. It was my vision. I had the final cut, but it's a whole lot of people that made this film great.
Let me cut to the round table. I want to get everybody back in here. Kat?
Welcome back to Cat and KOOGE Go to the Movies. Today's show is entitled, Who Do You Call When You Want to Finance a Film? Welcome back to all of our guests from Movie Money Confidential.
Thank you.
One of the producers, Scott DuPont, the director, Rick Paplin, and the muse, Miss Louise Levinson. KOOGE will moderate and I will chime in here and there for comments and monitor any questions from our live audience. Please text us. KOOGE?
Yes. Well, I'll direct my questions to particular people. This is a roundtable discussion. Feel free to jump in and sharpen any response or disagree. Before we get to the message, now, I don't think we've sorted this out. Who came up with the name Money Movie Confidential? Who are we pointing to?
I believe it was Rick.
Yeah. I was very inspired by Tony Bourdain. God bless him. I love Tony. He was a great writer. He was a great filmmaker. You all know him from his travel and food shows. Mm-hmm. Tony had written a book called Kitchen Confidential. And my wife and I went on a cruise, a long cruise to the middle of nowhere. And out in the middle of the ocean, I started reading his book. And it was an expose of what really goes on in a New York restaurant and why you never eat fish on Monday or Tuesday. It was a great book. And that spun into his TV series. So I really wanted to pay homage to him. And I love the book. And that was sort of the idea. So we came up with, and Louise had a website called moviemoney.com. So if you want to know anything about Louise's book, if you want to go see the movie, go to moviemoney.com. It's all right there. And she was gracious enough to let us use it. So we just put together Movie Money Confidential. That's how it came about.
I'm going to ask each of you briefly, starting with you, Rick, what's the message of this movie?
If you're not making a movie and you want to, start. You should be. The world and the country needs you. We need new, original, courageous voices to tell their stories and break the lockhold that Hollywood has had on storytelling for my entire life.
Louise, what's the message for you? Did you hear me? Louise?
Louise, KOOGE wants to know what the message is for you.
What's the what?
The message for you. For you, what's the message you hope this movie gets out?
Well, the main thing is, besides going to see the movie, is that, I really have to echo what Rick said, because I feel like in my area, what I did was I just decided this didn't exist. I wanted to do it, and I created the whole formula for doing a business plan for a film. And I went ahead and did it. So if there's anything that you want to do like that, or not necessarily in my area, you really want to go and do it. The other thing is that many investors really want to invest. You just have to approach them the right way.
Scott, what was the message for you that moved you about this movie, and you moved other people?
When the final cut came together, it was a lot more inspiring and positive and upbeat, especially with the music and the way it all cut together. It was just blew me away, almost kind of the old Disney-esque. And we actually drafted a mission statement at the very beginning that we wanted to empower and inspire all these people to go make their own movie, like Rick alluded to. And before the movie was even finished, we've had a couple of people that have made their movies that were just inspired by the production while it was going on. So I wouldn't be surprised if dozens and dozens of people, and hopefully by the end of this year, thousands of people, YouTubers, TikTokers, will go out and get their money and tell their story.
Kat, what was the message that you got from watching the movie?
Well, this movie reminds me of what my dad used to say. He said, if you want to get to heaven, the best way is to ask questions. And that's what the movie was about, just answering critical questions that would allow anyone who has the courage to make a movie move forward. So that was the message for me.
And the message for me, Rick also articulated, filmmaking need not be the captive of Hollywood suits. Let me begin with Louise. What was your favorite scene in this movie?
My favorite scene?
Yes.
I really have to egotistical and say me, but that's not right. I have to tell you why. Because I was actually able to get on film and say what the real budget for the Blair Witch was. Because it's been all over the internet with wrong numbers. And I was so thrilled that he put me on film and let me do that. It really is my favorite scene.
Tell the truth.
Right.
DuPont, Scott?
So,
your favorite scene?
There's an interesting scene in the movie, which is in the middle of the movie, which I won't spoil. That was crazy and interesting. But for me, by far, the favorite scene. And when you're sitting in the edit suite, I wasn't in the edit suite as much as Rick and Maggie and John were. But I've seen the movie so many times, I can't watch. I mean, I've seen the movie probably 150 times. But the ending scene with the music and the shot that Eddie and John got, Eddie was the drone operator. I can watch that scene 1,000 times. It's just out of the park what everyone did on that last final scene of the movie.
Rick, I'm asking you last. Kat, what was your favorite scene in the movie?
I had a lot of favorite scenes, but for me, I really love to see the questions and answers section with the students asking the panel any questions that stood in the way of them achieving their goals. I just saw the trust the students had, with the panel, and then I felt that the panel really wanted to give to these young movie makers. So the reason why it was my favorite was because there is a lack of mentorship, and so they just either encourage you to find a mentor or allow you to take a sneak peek at what it's like to have a mentor, and now you know what you're looking for.
My favorite scenes were all the scenes in which you actually got to see investors. Investors, one of the things I look for in a movie is something I've never seen before. And something I've never seen before is the investors really identified. A lot of times they're there in background roles, etc. But I think people have an image of investors being like Elon Musk driving around in fancy cars, etc., as opposed to being real people. And I think the idea that they're real people and that there are people outside of Hollywood that will invest in movies, I thought that was, to me, also an important part of the message. Rick?
I think
you
I'm
have 100 hours. What was your favorite?
Every scene is my favorite, or it wouldn't be in a movie. But what really touched me emotionally, and we are hearing from people, audiences, unbelievable. We uncovered the real Burt Reynolds, his passion for helping people, his disdain of Hollywood. Here's a guy who went up to Mount Rushmore. He's up there with John Wayne. He was the #1 box office star in the world for 10 years. And he devoted the last part of his life helping young people and students and trying to encourage people. And he was brutally honest. He didn't like me at the beginning of the interview. We tussled. The full interview runs an hour and 18 minutes. And I've since found out it was the longest interview Burt had ever done. He doesn't do documentaries. He didn't like to do interviews over 8 minutes long. He liked to do glib TV appearances. And I think uncovering and honoring his memory, that the people that are trapped in the system in Hollywood know that it's wrong. And in a way, Burt endorsed the movie by his participation and by the things he said. And as you know, KOOGE, in the credits, I paid homage to him with all the little banter back and forth like he did in his movies. And I just feel really honored. I had chased Burt my entire life. We had met. We had talked about working together. I went to a set, one of his movies. He was shooting in Vegas. And before I got there, he had broken the jaw of the director and took over as director. I said, well, this may not be the night to talk to Burt. And on my birthday, when I first moved to Palm Beach, he came over to the table where I was having dinner, wished me happy birthday. I said, Burt, I wanted to work with you my entire life. And he said, someday we will. And in the last 6 months of his life, we worked together. And I believe the only honest cinematic representation of Burt Reynolds is in this film. And I'm so proud of that. Very proud of that.
Well, one of the things that is obvious is the love fest between you and Burt Reynolds. That is I could feel it. Scott, Rick was just saying that even 007 didn't make money. If the chances of making money on any film are so slim, why in heaven do people invest in films?
Well, part of the thing, I have a podcast now called Finance Your Movie, and I like kind of just talking to the young filmmakers getting out of school, people trying to do their first or second film. And I think I don't have time to go into all, but I call it the 5 shifts. And one of the shifts that might not make sense on the surface is when you're approaching potential investors. I believe one of the shifts you need to make is tell them the bad news first. Just like Louise alluded to about the risk disclosure in the business plan and the investor agreement. If you're really honest and upfront about the fact that 70% of independent films don't make their money back, that gives you an opportunity to say, well, here's why I believe in Rick Pamplin, this genius director. I believe we have a best-selling book we got the rights to. We've got Maggie. We've got Think Visual Group. We've got this great team. Here's how we're going to be different than the other 70% of independent filmmakers. And that's the approach I think that, well, every single person who invested in the movie Money Confidential, they found that refreshing and they wrote a check. So sometimes it works just to be honest and share the bad news up front.
Hey, Rick, I know our films are our children, and you had to leave 99 hours on the cutting floor. Other than my scenes, what did it really hurt you to cut out of that movie?
Nothing. Because what's in it is so true. We did a thing where we used artificial intelligence and transcribed all the interviews. And we went over every word of them, and everything that was repeated, we cut out. No shots are repeated. All my pet peeves in making films, I said, I'm not doing in this film. And if somebody didn't have anything interesting to say, they're not in the movie. So, there were some good interviews. There were some interesting things. But the best of the best is what's in the film. I wanted the film to be 90 minutes, but I couldn't cut it. I couldn't get it to 90 minutes. But we got it to an hour 41. and that was as tight as we could get it. But there's more stuff coming from us, KOOGE, so stay tuned. We'll be announcing some stuff soon. There's more stuff coming. This is the first real Rick Pamplin film. There's going to be some more. We're working on stuff now. This is not a one-time thing. I talk to people on LinkedIn every day. I talk to people on podcasts. I talk to people on Twitter. Anytime I have an opportunity to encourage someone or answer a question, I want to do that because I've been very lucky. I've known some very wonderful people in my life, and I got to go to Hollywood and meet there were a lot of great people and a lot of artists. And the people at the top, KOOGE, are like us. It's the people in the middle that have their hands on the money and the control that are kind of keeping the artists from the audience. And that's the wall we want to break down. And I think in the post-pandemic world, with smaller budgets and new ways of distributing films, I think we can do that. And I think that you alluded to this earlier. The equipment's cheaper, it's easier, but you still got to know your craft. But you can make a great movie for under $1 million and make a profit. And yes, we're in profit. Our pictures are already
definitely prove that.
Yeah. So,
Louise, is there anything you would from the book that you wanted in the movie?
Was there anything that I wanted in the movie?
Yes.
That's not in it?
Right.
I think everything I could ever want to be in the movie was in it. I was so happy to see people to see who investors are and how you talk to them and what they want to hear, what they want to see, that sort of thing. I think that was one of my favorite things. But I think everything that is in the movie is what I want to.
And still, I would encourage people to read the book. There's much, as part of my research for the book, for this show, I looked at some of the criticism, and quite frankly, there's not much of it. One critic, though, Rick, said that it was inappropriate for you to be talking from a yacht in the coastal waters of Florida, being a filmmaker. I'd like to hear your response to that.
We wanted to shoot on water because we're in Palm Beach, and there was a neighbor of mine where I lived who owned that yacht and said, I'd really like to help you. And he wouldn't invest, but he gave us a yacht for free. So, I do love it that a critic assumed it was my yacht and I'm floating around Palm Beach on my yacht. I thought it was funny. Some of the comments are hysterical. I'm just very grateful to people that are watching the movie. I also want to mention, KOOGE, because your background in education, we're on Hoopla. If you have a library card anywhere in America, you can go in and sign up for a wonderful streaming channel with all the great classic films called Hoopla. It's absolutely free, and you can see our movie. If you want to go see it in all its glory, please go to one of the other, go to Amazon or one of the great sites. But if you want to see our movie, go to Hoopla. If you're on a budget or you're struggling, go see the movie, and you can see it for free. And Scott will probably never speak to me again for saying this, but you can go to Hoopla, get a library card. By the way, I love libraries. They're one of the greatest resources. We must keep our libraries going. And I was so honored when they bought the movie. Louise's book is in every library in America. I want you to buy the 9th edition, but if you can't, go to the library and read whatever edition they have. We want to encourage the people watching this and listening to this, go make your movie. That's the message.
Another critic from my hometown, Harlem, Amsterdam News, questioned the lack of diversity in the experts. Although they did say knowledge is knowledge. Scott, you want to take that one?
About the diversity, I think it's kind of, just like Rick alluded to, some of the critics I don't, it's kind of laughable because I think we had a pretty good amount of diversity. We had quite a few women in above the line positions in the film. We had Latinos, we had African Americans. So I think we were pretty diverse, young, old.
Yeah.
And you had me.
There you go.
You were a great contribution, Koob. I mean that KOOGE, that one line that you said, it was really, really powerful advice about relationships.
And KOOGE, I'll step in it right here. I'll give you some controversy. There aren't a lot of investors that have been women or minorities. It's been a business dominated by white males. That's the reality. Also, Scott's too nice to tell you, one of the shooting days, we had 7 people for the next day scheduled to do interviews who canceled. People did not want to appear on camera. People did not want to tell the truth about investing in movies. People had all kinds of reasons. It was very hard to get people to talk about writing checks, investing in movies, and identifying themselves and talking about it. And we had many more people that we booked that just wouldn't talk to us. And it was very hard. We had to dig very deep to everybody we knew to find people. But I would say, Scott, half of the money people canceled at the last minute that we were going to interview.
Yeah, I remember that one day we lost 7, like literally 24 hours before the shoot date. So we scrambled to rearrange the shooting schedule that night for the next day.
Mm-hmm. So my answer is we got everybody we could, and we will continue. I'm very proud of my track record and the people that we got. I thought Salma Hayek, who's a symbol for women all over the world, but also from many different cultures, which we talk about in the film. Louise did her film, The Prophet. And one of my favorite segments is Salma's segment with the clip of her movie. And her, I love that Salma says in the movie, she goes, "What am I, crazy? What am I doing?" I mean, here's one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And if you look at the movie, if you step back, KOOGE, here's Burt Reynolds, here's Salma Hayek, here's all these people questioning the whole system. The whole system is rotten to the core, and we need to have a revolution in the way films are financed and the way movies are made and the way that audiences access them. And that's what I think we need in this country and in this world. And hopefully we're contributing to starting that dialogue.
And one critic said that he thought you were angry at Hollywood. I think that was accurate.
I don't know. I forgive everybody. No. I listen. Unforgiveness is like swallowing poison and hoping the other person dies. I'm not mad at anybody, but I'm an angry filmmaker. Every night that a kid goes to bed starving in this world, there's no excuse. There's no excuse for the wars that are going on in this country. There's no excuse. We stopped it in Vietnam. We were done with that. And now they've continued these endless wars, children and people's lives destroyed for what? We can make a better world. That's the real message for me. And I know the people listening to your show want to make a better world. And if they don't, if they want to go make Spider-Man 19, great. Well, go talk to somebody else, because I don't give a damn about Spider-Man 19. I want to figure out, how do we feed starving children in this world? How do we stop war? How do we get clean water? My wife and I have been giving money, KOOGE. These families in these villages, the children bathe in the river where they also defecate, and all these diseases. People don't have sanitation in the world. 90% of the people in the world don't have toothbrushes. We have got to address these issues as artists and filmmakers, or we are failing. And that's my opinion.
Well, one of the things for sure, directors have to have passion. And I think you are gifted with passion. I'm going to ask each of you for one piece of advice that you'd care to leave with young filmmakers about the agony and ecstasy of filmmaking. But before that, Luis, I want you to hold up your book one more time so that people get a good look at the Bible. Just bring it back a little. Bring it back a little. You're too close to the camera. Bring it back a little.
There you go.
There we go. Right there. That's the Bible for filmmakers and financing. So,
And of course, remember moviemoney.com.
and remember moviemoney.com. So while we have you on camera, Louise, what's your final bit of wisdom for filmmakers?
My advice is what we've been saying. Know what you want to do. Figure out what it is what you want to do. When people talk about passion films as if there's this weird sort of thing that people, aren't going to do anything or something like that. Any film you make should be a passion of yours that you want to make and follow it through. Whether it's a horror film, as long as it's something that you want to do and that you care about, go ahead and do it.
Okay, thank you for that bit of wisdom. Scott?
I would say invest in yourself first. That's the best investment you can make. So if you're watching and just in the spur of the moment, you're really serious about making a movie, just go to moviemoney.com, get the book or click and get the movie right there. But a step further, if you're getting ready to do your movie, which it really is, as Rick alluded to, this is a filmmaker's renaissance. You can make a movie for 20 cents on the dollar compared to what I was making movies for 15 or 20 years ago. Invest in hiring someone like Louise or hiring a producer that has more years of experience than you, or hire somebody to help you write a really detailed line item budget. And those investments will pay off when investors look at your team. They're gonna say, oh, you guys spent money on getting a really accurate budget, or you have a really solid business plan, or you guys haven't made a feature film yet, but you got this co-producer over here that has years of experience. So invest in yourself, and that will pay off in spades when you start talking to investors and for your entire career.
Rick, you have so much wisdom. One thing that you want to leave our audience with?
I think you have to believe in yourself. And I think if you believe in your heart and in your mind that you're a filmmaker, that you have talent, you have to start there and build on that foundation. And I'm going to say a plug here because I've known you forever, KOOGE, and I know that you are a great leader and a great educator, and you've gotten some hard knocks, and you've always come back up on your feet. And I just met Kat, my new friend, but I think people should watch this show. I think people should be on YouTube. I think people should get all the education they can. They don't have to go to USC. I taught screenwriting at University of Southern California, also called University of Spoiled Children. And for about, $65,000 to $100,000 a year, you can go there, but you don't need that. You can educate yourself. You can go to the library. You can watch Hoopla. You can read Louise's book. You can watch our movie, and you can follow this show of Kat and KOOGE Go to the Movies, because you're probably going to learn everything you need to know in this show and Scott's podcast and my movie and Louise's book. And we're like film school in a box. We're everything they don't teach you in film school, and we teach you the stuff they don't teach. And it's great. If you have the money to go to film school, great. Most people don't. Most people who get out of film school don't work in the film business. They cannot find work. They can't find jobs. We're giving them these degrees, anywhere from 65,000 to 120,000 degrees a year in filmmaking. And go read Variety. Go read the trades. Less and less jobs. Disney laying off. Warner's laying off. All these companies are downsizing. The future are small independent films, the kind that Louise writes business plans for, and the kind of people that appear on Scott's show, and I'm assuming will appear on this show. Learn from them. Read scripts, watch great movies, and decide if you've got what it takes. And if you do, never, ever, 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 ever give up. Never be discouraged. And I'm always in your corner. Always. For anybody that wants to make a movie, especially that has an important story to tell. And that's what this show can be, a nucleus I'd like to see dozens of people inspired by this show to go out and make better movies and get their careers going. So thank you for your service, KOOGE. Kat, you're my new best friend. I think this show is going to be a big hit. Thank you, guys.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. I cannot rate this film because I'm in it. However, as both a college professor and a digital media arts producer, I recommend it highly. Kat, you can rate it. What do you give it?
I recommend it with 5 stars. I think it is a must see. As Rick said, and I will buttress, learning from people who are willing to gift it to you is just it's just a present beyond what you could even imagine. Yes, like there is film school, but I've been blessed to have your mentorship and also meet wonderful, beautiful individuals who have blessed me with knowledge. And so they're just passing on the torch and giving these secrets away. And they're also giving their blessings to future filmmakers. So definitely a 5. Yes. So I am the only one rating the film because you guys were on it.
So thank
But
you for
that's okay.
taking time out from your very busy schedule, and thank you most of all to our audience. Please let us know what you think. You can email us at kweliworks@gmail.com and like us on facebook.com and Kweliworks on Facebook. Now, hold on. I want to take a chapter from Scott's book of pitches and ask each of you whether you allow us to be a guest at the Orlando International Film Fest this July at the Orlando Convention Center. Kat and I will host a workshop and a reception for you if you're willing on July 12th, and you can come by via internet. You don't have to be there, but if you are there, we'll set up a hospitality suite so other people
Yes.
can press the flesh and share and get to share some of the knowledge that you just have dripping out of your fingers. We're holding it July 12th at the convention center at the Alpha Sorority biannual meeting in Orlando. Like I said, you can come in person or by internet. Are you guys available?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm shooting a film and I'm not sure the schedule yet. I'm starting in June. So I'll work it around shooting. So I may not be able to be there in person, but I will definitely support this in any way possible. KOOGE, I've always supported you and I always will. And I love what you guys are doing with the festival. And, Orlando and Orange County is my old stomping grounds. And I had a great time there. And there's a lot of great people up there. So we'd love to support. So I'm in whatever capacity I can do. And with the caveat that I'm shooting a movie.
Thank you. Louise?
Yes, well, I'm planning on being there
And Scott?
the 12th.
If I can fly in from Hollywood, I will be there in person. If I can't swing that, I will definitely be there virtually. So either way, I'm there.
You see, Scott, I learned from you. I got that from your movie.
Yes.
Good pitch. Good pitch.
That's a commitment. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for being here with us, this wonderful team. I'm Kat, coming to you live from Boca Raton, Florida. Live passionately.
And I'm KOOGE, coming to you from Orlando, Florida. Free your mind and empower yourself.
See you next time when Kat and KOOGE go to the movies to see Beyonce's spectacular and epic masterpiece, Black is King. And yes, we will be addressing the controversies as well. See you then.